Have you ever heard of a mother of 13 children who claimed the Virgin Mary appeared to her and whose body was later found almost untouched decades after her death? In a quiet village in Belgium, a humble woman named Leonie van den Dijk became the center of one of the most mysterious apparition stories of the 20th century. She received warnings about sin, war, and the future of humanity. She lived a hidden life of prayer and sacrifice, and years after her burial, witnesses were stunned when her body remained remarkably incorrupt. It all began in Onkerzele in Belgium. On August 4, 1933, Leonie van den Dijk, a mother abandoned by her husband and caring for her surviving children, went to pray the rosary at a small chapel in the village. While praying there, she experienced something extraordinary. The Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to her. Leonie later described seeing a radiant and indescribably beautiful light. The light was almost blue, mixed with silver and red. Then Our Lady descended within that heavenly glow. Leonie felt overwhelmed with reverence, as though her soul wanted to fall down in worship. She described the Virgin Mary with blonde hair flowing beneath a white veil. Her head was a crown shining around her forehead and entire head. She wore a long white dress flowing over her feet and resting upon a sphere, with a pale blue belt and ribbons hanging from it. The message of Our Lady in Onkerzele was simple yet urgent. I have come for the conversion of sinners. One should keep Sunday holy. But the messages soon became more serious. Near the end of September 1933, the Blessed Virgin appeared very sorrowful and warned Leonie. Pray, pray a lot. Let us pray much for the conversion of sinners. Your country is in great danger. Our Lady asked that the village once again organize a procession in honor of Our Lady of Sorrows. She also requested that the chapels representing the 7 sorrows be restored or rebuilt. During one apparition, the Virgin Mary traced the outline of a small chapel on the ground with her foot, showing where she wanted a chapel built in her honor. She said, "The chapel may be small, but according to the love one wishes to show, it may also be larger." That chapel would eventually be consecrated in May of 1998. As time passed, many people noticed something unusual about Leonie. She seemed to possess knowledge she could not have learned naturally. She spoke about biblical history, future events, and even private details from the lives of people around her. Friends were often astonished when she accurately described things she had no ordinary way of knowing. Yet Leonie remained humble and reserved. She did not boast about these gifts and often stayed silent when people pressed her with questions. She especially avoided speaking with those who rejected church teaching or claimed to possess absolute truth. At Leonie's request, many of her visions were kept secret until after her death. During her lifetime, she reportedly foretold the deaths of King Albert I and Queen Astrid. She also warned about the coming of the Second World War and several events that would unfold during it. Leonie lived a life of deep sacrifice. She prayed the rosary constantly and performed severe acts of penance. For years, she slept on the hard floor as an act of reparation for sins. She endured long periods of fasting, surviving only on a few drops of tonic dissolved in water, besides receiving Holy Communion. She was also said to bear the holy wounds of Christ. The wound in her side caused terrible suffering, yet she carefully hid it, even from her own family. She was even known to have the gift of bilocation, and it was even reported that she bilocated many times to Convergence and communicated with the stigmatist Therese Newman. Through her prophetic insights, Leonie explained that salvation history was divided into 3 great periods. The first stretched from Adam to the flood, the second from Noah to the coming of Jesus Christ. The third age, she said, would end around 1975 and would be followed by a short period of about 15 years during which Christ would temporarily reign on earth. According to Leonie, at the end of each age, God intervened because of humanity's sins. In the first age came the flood. In the second age came the sending of Jesus, whose sacrifice on the cross brought salvation to mankind. At the end of the third age, she warned, there would be a punishment by fire that would destroy much of humanity. Leonie was not the only visionary connected to Onkerzele. Bertonia Hotzkamp also claimed to receive apparitions from the Blessed Virgin Mary. On February 3, 1934, Our Lady told her, "I come to repeat once again what I desire, that stations be erected here of my sorrows, so that pilgrims may come here to contemplate them. I also want a pilgrimage on the first Friday after the Feast of the Sacred Heart, and that in honor of the Sacred Head of my son. All those who carry the image of the Sacred Head of my son will be protected. Be cheerful, I will never abandon you. Farewell." Another visionary, Jules de Vauched, was also drawn to Onkerzele through apparitions of the Blessed Virgin. He was given the mission of spreading devotion to the Holy Head of Christ, described as the seat of divine wisdom. This devotion was especially presented as a remedy against intellectual pride. Through him, warnings were also given about the consequences humanity would face if the request of heaven continued to be ignored. Because the apparitions in Onkerzele happened soon after the famous apparitions of Barang and Bano, many newspapers mocked the events. Critics ridiculed the idea that the Virgin Mary would appear again in Belgium for a third time. The press fueled disbelief and suspicion. Despite this opposition, large crowds of pilgrims still traveled to Onkerzele. Many gathered near the chapel with the Lord's Grotto in Kempstraat, where Leonie received the apparitions. During this period, witnesses reported 3 extraordinary sun miracles occurring in December of 1933 and again in January and February of 1934. In total, there were 66 public apparitions to Leonie. The Virgin Mary appeared under several titles, including Our Lady of the Poor, Our Lady of Her Immaculate Heart, Our Lady of Sorrows, and Queen of the Rosary. After the public apparitions ended, Leonie continued to receive many private apparitions of both the Blessed Virgin and Jesus. But perhaps the most astonishing event connected to Leonie came shortly before her death in 1949. A few days before she died, she reportedly predicted that her body would not decompose quickly. Years later, in 1974, her grave was opened during an official investigation. Witnesses present included Jan van Humpai and a camera crew from Belgium television. To the amazement of those there, Leonie's body had not decayed. Her remains were found remarkably intact, despite never having been embalmed or specially prepared. A second exhumation in 1982 revealed that the body was still unusually well preserved. One of the investigators, a forensic pathologist and follower of Leonie, reportedly admitted that science had no adequate explanation for what they discovered. The Church, however, approached the events cautiously. The Archbishop of Mechelen reportedly took a negative stance towards the apparitions in 1942 after an investigation. Priests were forbidden from promoting the events, although no official public condemnation appears to have been widely published. Even today, the story of Onkerzele remains largely unknown outside Belgium, yet the messages given there continue to echo with urgency: prayer, conversion, penance, and faithfulness to God. Whether one views these events with belief or caution, the life of Leonie van den Dijk remains a remarkable testimony of sacrifice, suffering, and unwavering devotion to prayer.